Hey, Lara, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast with me today. I am so excited to get to talk with you. Now, I gave everyone a little bit of an intro already about who you are, but I want to know from you, tell me about what you do.
Yes. Thank you, Jen. I am also super pumped to be here with you today. And so, what I do is I help cycle breaking parents. I help cycle breaker parents shift towards connection based parenting so they can build bonds that are unbreakable with their children.
I'd love to hear that so much. Tell me more about cycle breakers. What does this word mean?
Yes, yes. Often, the way we were raised really influences how we parent. And even for parents who want to parent differently, they often fall into the trap. I'll just use myself as an example of I'm going to do the opposite, right? I'm just going to do the opposite of what my parents did. And that'll make me a cycle breaker and we'll be all good. What, I mean, basically the first 10 years was okay. I mean, there were times where I would be very reactive, get overwhelmed and flooded with emotions and not know why.
Mhm.
And but by the time 11, 12, 13, that's when I noticed my child was just disconnecting from me.
Mm.
And, I was just talking about this yesterday in my Facebook group with my group members, the Cycle Breaker Parenting Hub. And, you ever had one of those conversations with your child where you just keep trying to fix it, but you can see it going south?
It's just getting worse and worse, and it's
Yeah,
just blowing up in your face. Absolutely.
exactly. And you're sitting there like, what the heck? Like, I'm
Yeah.
being really super patient, like compared to my parents, I'm being like super parent, but I did not understand what was going on. And of course, I was filled with shame. So I suffered like that for so long. And that's why I want to help parents override those scripts that keep the words that keep coming out when we don't want them to. They come out and you're like,
No,
no.
no, stop it. Get back in there. Why do I
Right.
sound like my mother? What is happening?
Exactly. And then it even shocks you. Sometimes you're like,
Yeah.
whoa, so
You're like, oh my God, I've turned into my mother. Oh no, it's
yes,
the worst thing that could happen. I love
it-
this so much. And this is why I wanted to have you on, because I think a lot of what we do is very similar, but we've gone in two different directions, right? Which is
yes,
why I think it's so important for us, though, to be mindful of how our childhood has affected us. Now,
absolutely.
I think you would agree with me on this. For those of us that do childhood work, trauma work, all this stuff, we're not trying to blame our parents, are we?
That is such a good point. I'm so glad you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
that, Jen, because that is, it's a journey. It's a healing journey. And honestly, in my work, that's where we begin. We begin with you. Because that's where all this stuff is. And often we just go through life and we're not aware. We're not even aware of what these scripts are, what's running in the background, even like some trapped beliefs in there that don't align with who you authentically are. So that's why you say and do things with your children and afterwards you're like, "Oh my God, I should not have done that. I feel so guilty." And the
Yeah.
guilt and the shame and you don't even know what you should have said.
Yeah,
Right?
and because it just got ingrained in us. We talk about this a lot in my program, but we have to work on what I call attachment wounds. Limited beliefs
Yes.
are another word. Core wounds is another word. So if anyone is out there and they're like, "Oh, this sounds familiar," it's because it's all kind of the same. Let's be really honest.
Yes.
We're all learning about it. We're all figuring this stuff out. And what I really want to be mindful of is as we talk about this and we talk about this stuff happened to us in childhood, or for myself, I was called difficult or annoying, or I was perceived as a burden, or I was
That's
always in the
right.
way. Jenny, get out of the way. What are you doing? All this stuff.
Right.
Like my parents did the best they could with the tools that they had.
That's the thing. And, my family, I'm just going to go into a little background here. My family is riddled with people going no contact. And, for me, it started, when I was 18, I didn't even make it to college. I ran away before
Mm.
that happened.
Ugh.
And, I was miserable. I
Yeah.
was miserable. But so I was no contact. My brother has been no contact with my parents. Um, unfortunately, here's a great cycle. This is a demonstration of how cycles work. My child had to go no contact with their father. And that,
Mm.
for me, like, and it was so painful. It was painful for my child. It was painful for my ex-husband. Um, so this is really my why, because like you said, it's not about never speaking to your parents again. It's
Yeah,
about healing. It's about
exactly.
self-awareness. It's about learning about emotions, which in my house, we only had one, which was anger. So, so it's
Yeah.
learning. And then after you do all that work, then, you and I kind of cross, because then it's how do you talk to your kid about emotions? How do you teach your kid about emotions?
Yeah, and so
So
many times people want to jump into that, right? They want to jump into, okay, but what do I say? How do I act?
yes,
What do I do? What do I get? How do I get them to clean their room? How do I get them to do this, all this stuff? But what you really
yes,
work on is, and thank you so much, by the way, for just being so open and transparent. I think it's going to help
yes,
so many women to hear just the struggles that we're all going through here, right? Like we're
absolutely.
all a part of this process. But
Yes,
what I really hear you saying is it starts with you.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
tell me a little bit about how you work with your clients and how you get them through this.
Right. So in my 12-week coaching program, the Cyclebreakers Success System, the first, I don't know, I'd say about 4 to 5 weeks, or 4 weeks, is focused on you. And that's the difference. This is not just a parenting situation. This is a healing situation. This is a understanding why you're saying words that don't align with you, getting to the root of that. And then you have to start from kind of ground zero, building emotional intelligence, right? And awareness. And then we move into communication strategies, and then building processes that will ensure that you are able to build unbreakable bonds, because that's the goal, right? I don't want anyone to have their children go no
Yeah,
contact on them.
right.
It's so painful.
I can only imagine. I mean, that's the scary part, right? We have our children, we want to love them, we want to be a part of their lives, and then to know that,
Yes.
oh my gosh, something has happened. But even in that
Yes.
moment, let's say there's a listener out there and their child has gone no contact with them,
Yes.
or something didn't go the way they expected, and it
Right.
happens. It's okay.
That's right.
The kids get older. I know I have a lot of clients and listeners who are in that stage. The kid's 18, so now
Yes.
they're divorcing and separating, and the kid is frustrated and upset. What can a woman do in this moment to
Right.
really get back on track? How can she break the cycle that she's been weighed down with her entire life?
Right. Right. And often what I see and
Hmm.
hear about is when the kids go no contact, there's like an externalizing of why. It's a lot of times blaming the children, right? They're
Hmm.
spoiled, they're entitled, they're not respecting me, or they're not grateful, right? And so those mindsets and beliefs, limiting beliefs, about what, how you see yourself as a parent, how you see your child as a person, a human, that's where they have to start. You have to start going deep inside you,
Hmm.
because that's when it gets hard. When somebody's gone no contact and they're over 18, right? They don't have to talk to you.
They don't. Yeah.
You have to, listen to them, and hear them. And you're not ready to do that until until you explore what's really happening inside of your hidden subconscious,
Yeah.
right? So that's what I would say. I would say that mindset is the first thing that has to, switcheroo.
Mm.
Growing self-compassion then, in order to give compassion to others, we need to be self-compassionate. And cycle breakers are often very difficult on themselves, So of course they then become difficult on kids.
Yeah,
So
it's just the projection of what's going on inside of
exactly.
you. Yeah. Which,
Exactly.
where did they get it from? Their parents, which is why you
Exactly.
talk about cycle breaking. It's not your fault that this is
That's right.
happening, but
That's right.
it is our responsibility
Right.
to do something about it, right?
Right.
If our child is, I have a 13-year-old, so I'm
Oh,
not quite
yes.
into that realms yet. I'm sure I'll do something that really pisses him off and like sets him off to some extent soon. But I've kind
No.
of gotten to that understanding of, oh, he's just a fully autonomous being. He is
That's,
just,
yeah.
yeah, he's not an extension of me. He's gonna
Right.
figure himself out. And if he gets older and he does decide to go no contact or something happens, the first question I'm going to ask isn't some victim mindset, woe is me, of like, oh my gosh, he's terrible, or what did I
Yeah.
do to
Yeah.
raise such an ungrateful child? I'm hearing my own kind of family's
Oh,
voices in
yeah.
my own head right there as I say that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
instead, I'll ask the question, or just get curious and be like, oh, sweetheart, like, I
Yes.
respect that and I understand that. And I have a sneaking suspicion if you can be that respectful, it's not going to last that long then, right?
That's
That's
right.
kind of the first step
That's
of just
right.
really letting them be. They have to go through it.
Yes.
Teenagers have to go through it.
Yes.
Their
Yes.
literal job is to disconnect from us.
That's right. And
So
to fight us. I mean,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
we can't love each other for too long or we would never let them leave, right? We have to be annoyed with each other at some point in time.
Yes, I often say it's like pregnancy. By the time you're at the 9th month, you're like, I don't care how the baby comes out. Just get the baby out.
Out of me.
So by the time they're 18, you're like, I don't care how the baby goes.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, just get going.
Let's
just
go.
Shoo. Yeah. And so that sometimes is going to look, I love someone that I really love in the work of parenting is Gabor Mate. People who know me know I adore that man. I'm in his Compassion Inquiry program.
Amazing.
He talks about what it's like with his adult son, Daniel. And in fact, they just put out a course together about how to build a relationship in adulthood with your parent again, which I think it's exactly like what needs to be out there.
Amazing.
Because it's so hard to be kind of that cycle breaker and trying to have that relationship with your parent again, and all your parent is still saying is you're ungrateful and you never call me enough.
Yes, my parents are never going to change.
No, exactly.
They're never going to change.
Yeah, and if they do, I mean, great, but we don't expect that.
That's right.
And the best part is just kind of owning those moments of mistakes, quote unquote mistakes that we made with our own children growing up.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do you handle that? How do you kind of handle that guilt and shame
right.
with your clients when they come to you and they're like, there's no changing this, Lara. Like we are just, I broke him. I screwed up. Everything's my fault. Like he's never coming back.
Right. That is an excellent question. And funnily enough, I just did a live session in the Cyclebreaker Parenting Hub. This month, I'm kind of focusing on, I use nonviolent communication, Dr. Rosenberg.
Love it. Yeah.
Yes. That his methodology for, resolving conflict, or when you have an unmet need, the 4-step conscious dialogue. Amazing.
It's the best. Yeah, I'm trained in that. That's what I try to teach people to do a lot of my communication stuff. It's stellar.
That's what I teach in my program. And because, I mean, when you use it and you do it, intentional about planning what you're going to say, man, it's like 180, right?
It is.
It's amazing. Your kid is just like right there with you. And and that's what I, tell parents that. And here's the thing, if they follow Instagram people who are giving them scripts to say in certain situation and all this, when you get stressed and overwhelmed with life or whatever, just those automatic scripts take over because you don't have the cognitive brain juice, I call it.
I like that, cognitive brain juice. I like that a lot. Yeah.
You don't have that to override these, things. So what I teach and in bite-sized little chunks in the group is, simple communication hacks. I'm doing the 4 Ds of disconnection this month.
Oh, I love that.
We did diagnosis yesterday, which means, when a doctor diagnoses you, they tell you what's wrong with you. And when parents tell you what's wrong with you, that's your self-talk when you're an adult, right? So I teach people how to make simple little communication shifts that also shift mindset.
I love
right?
this. Now, I want to know more about where on earth did you get this from? Like, where did you come from where you know all this stuff? You're so amazing at what you do. You're helping so many women to build the relationship up with their children. Such a needed thing. But tell me a little bit about where this passion comes from. How
Oh
did you get
yeah.
started?
Oh my goodness. Well, I can tell you that I am a cycle breaker,
Mhm.
and it has been a very painful journey for me. I had my child before there were people telling me what to say to my child and how to say it on the internet. And so I, you know, kind of started my parenting journey by doing the opposite. But it kind of even started before because I became a teacher. And they say, people who suffer childhood trauma and have those wounds, they tend to be the helpers,
Yeah.
right? And it's like some kind of healing thing. Like I need to be able to help you to help me. Right?
Yes.
you
It's
know,
a win-win at that point in time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I worked in public education, and one of I was a social justice warrior before, there
Yeah.
was a name for it. Um, so, and I noticed, like, here's the thing. I can help all the kids. I can help kids. I've taught thousands. I was an
Mhm.
instructional coach, wrote curriculum, coached teachers, all this stuff. But I can't change the parents.
Mhm.
They go home at the end of the day. And in
Yeah.
order for me to help children get equity and equal opportunity in this world, it's not fair that these kids get sent out into the world and they don't know emotional intelligence. They don't know how to communicate like that. And they're having all of those, internal wounds that are unhealed. So, anyway, towards the end of my teaching and education career, I said, you know, how else can I contribute? And since this was such a near and dear, and of course, being an educator, I was buried in shame and guilt. It kept me stuck for 10 years, probably. I knew that I was something, something's not right. I get so upset, blah, blah. But so I want to help others avoid that,
Mm.
the regret.
Yeah, so here you are, you're a teacher. What grades did you teach?
Oh gosh, I taught all grades from K through 8.
Oh,
I
really?
started,
Okay,
yes,
yeah. So
yes.
like you see all those young kids coming in, having a hard time, they're being emotionally dysregulated,
Oh yeah,
and you're finding this common denominator of where does it all kind of point back to,
that's
which
right.
is parents. And I'm sure you probably even saw children who could emotionally regulate and could have conversations with their peers and adults, and they kind of started excelling. Like I
You
see
are
this.
so spot on.
Yeah, and it's people talk about like, generational wealth and what we need to do to build generational wealth for our children. But I'm
Yes.
sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, what if we just give them some emotional regulation? Like, what if we
That's
just
what
treat them like humans?
you must be reading my emails, Jen, because I just started
No
I'm like,
way,
there's
sir. I actually genuinely did not, even though I know we are like friends and colleagues.
I
I
know.
did not. Yes, that's so funny.
I've been calling it, this is the new intergenerational wealth, emotional
Yes.
intelligence.
Oh, you know what it is? I saw it on Instagram recently. Someone said something about that. They said
Oh
like,
no.
they said give your child like generational wealth. Give them a
Yes.
loving, supportive, emotionally like regulated system.
Yes.
And I think it's so important so this stuff is important. And here
Oh,
it is. You're seeing it firsthand every day with these children coming in and
yes.
seeing like there's there's so many other different types of, like you said, equity that we could be
Yes.
giving to our children. Like, how can we be helping them more? And this is
Right.
one of those things we could be doing. And I love that.
Yes, and that's the thing. The kids come to school and they, the saying in education is Maslow before Bloom's. Kids who are in survival mode are not going to learn algebra.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
And that's so interesting that you say that because I was just talking with someone about our needs. And one of the things that I talked about is you need to know your needs in order to be able to communicate them to your partner.
yes.
And one of the things about needs is, yes, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for anyone that isn't familiar with that. It is just basically this idea of this theory where we need to get our safety needs met first, our physical, and then our oh my gosh, physiological. That word
Yes.
gets me every time.
That's a big
And then
one.
and then we can get to our belonging needs, and then we can get to
Yes.
our self-actualization, right? So if we're down here and we don't have safety, we can't even start thinking about like talking better to our husband
Oh,
or
yeah.
having a better conversation yet with our child, because us ourselves are still stuck as that little girl who isn't getting her needs met by
Absolutely.
mom or dad or grandma or grandpa, whoever your caregiver was when you were a child.
That's right. And that affected my relationships my whole life.
Yeah.
I did not even know. You're right. I did not know what I needed. I knew I was angry about stuff.
Yes.
I was angry, and then I would be angry,
Mm-hmm.
but I could never. I didn't learn how to express boundaries or any other thing in a loving, kind way. So I was always so afraid, oh, I'm going to say this and it's going to be mean or harsh because that's the only way I know how to talk, you
Yes.
know?
Now listen, I still like I call it now like blunt and honest, which I'm still
Right.
down for. But I hear you, because I was the same way and I used to hate it. People would be like, just be nicer to, your kid. Like he's just having a temper tantrum. It's not
Right.
his fault. And I'm like, all of this did to me as a parent growing up was shame me even more,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I couldn't hold my shit together,
Yeah.
because I had so much volatility built up in me from my
Yes.
own past traumatic upbringing, that when my child was then acting out, it brought up all of these old triggers inside of me
Oh, yes.
that just like made me want to lash out. And so yeah, everyone's being like, oh, just stay calm, he doesn't mean it. I was like, well, neither do I.
Right. See, that must be a secure a parent speaking who was taught emotional intelligence as a
Right,
child.
exactly. They're like,
That's
yeah,
the
they're just
difference.
trying. Like, I know they're just trying. But
Right.
like that's the thing. My little girl's coming out too, and she's having a temper tantrum. Whereas now with the work, I think you and I do very, very similar work in terms of identifying our limited beliefs. I think there's a lot of
Yes.
us, a lot of coaches out there right now, finally, thankfully, that are
Yes.
getting understanding of how does our nervous system actually work.
Yes.
Therapy is great. All of that stuff is really great. I want people to still go do what they need to do. But what
Yes.
you get from a coach, like
Yes.
someone like Laura, someone like myself, is actionable and tangible steps to actually work towards changing what it is
Yes.
you're doing, not just going back and talking about, how pissed off you are that mom, like left you in the grocery store when you were 5 and
Right.
she shouldn't have, but you threw a temper tantrum and she left you. Like,
Right. Right.
I could talk about that all day, every day, if I wanted
Right.
to with my therapist, but it wasn't getting me anywhere.
Right. You're not going to heal that way, you know?
Exactly. So it's like,
Mhm.
I think a lot of us, I know a lot of women, a lot of my listeners, they've done the work.
Yeah.
It's almost like they know what to do. They've been to the therapist. They've done the couples counseling. They've gotten, the parenting specialist. They read the books. They're
Yes.
trying everything and nothing is working. What would you say to those women out there?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'd say is this is a massive undertaking, right? This is not a simple just do XYZ and you're done, right? So, because it is so massive, oftentimes that stops people from even taking their first step because they're like, oh, screw it. I can't I'm just not a calm person, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And it makes them feel, so that's where the guilt and shame comes because they then, have that identity. Oh, I'm loud. I'm a
Yeah.
yeller. And that's just the way I am.
Yeah.
So there's that, like getting started and not being overwhelmed and quitting. I think a lot of people, fall into that category.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the structure, it's in education speak, we call this a spiral curriculum. It's very intentional. One step leads to the other. And it's kind of like you can't, go over here and do that, go over there and do that. But so in my opinion, those are the things that also one last thing, third thing, I think that people need validation and support
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because this stuff, that's the other thing. You don't start working on this stuff and then a week later it's fixed.
Yeah. Right.
So often it's like this. It's like our experience of our entrepreneurship. It's like, oh, I'm great. I'm doing so good. Oh my God, you're so good.
Let's.
Boosh. Oh, I suck. Like, so I think those are three reasons why coaching during this process is super helpful.
Yeah, because you
Yeah.
need, I mean, when I heard you say, you need validation, I was thinking accountability, you need support, because
Yes,
again, that's something we did not get in childhood.
that's right.
And so we don't have to do this alone anymore, you guys.
That's
Like,
right.
it is something that we can ask for help. And yeah, sure. Like back in the day, we would have maybe had our aunties or our besties or our cousins or even our mom to be able to talk to.
Yes.
But not all of us have that anymore. And we
Right.
can grieve that. That's okay. But
Right.
the next step is go out and find your community. I don't care where it
Absolutely.
is, but go and make it again. I mean, it
Yes.
was just like 100 years ago. We were all farming our own foods half the time. And like, I don't know about you, but I don't, grow. Actually, that's not true. I do have an apple tree, but I
Good
do
for you.
mainly still get my apples from the grocery store.
Right.
I'm going somewhere now and I'm purchasing that stuff, right? I'm going out there now and I'm investing in my health. I'm getting grass-fed beef. I'm getting organic fruits and vegetables. I'm inquiring about the different farms in the area. I don't have
Right.
my own farm, and
That's
then
right.
sometimes, sure, would it be healthier if we all each had our own farm? Yeah. Would it be
Right.
healthier if we each all had healthy families that raised us in a good and loving way so we don't have to be dealing with this shit?
I
Yeah,
know
it would
it.
be. But we don't have it.
Right.
So we need to find our community where we can. And I think
Yes.
I just really want to like just knock people over the heads with that. And
Yes.
Laura is someone who's in my community. She is a part of a
Yes.
community of other coaches that I know. And it's a bunch of us women. We all get together, and we get excited and we celebrate with each other and we bitch and we complain, and it's
Yes.
so needed.
Oh, so
Without
much.
you ladies, oh my gosh, I would just feel like I'm floundering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the community part. I mean, because with coaching or with cycle breaking, I could recommend something to you that doesn't work for you in your particular situation. So that's another thing that a coach is great at. Okay, let's take this. It's not working. Let's figure it out. Let's figure
Yeah.
out something that will work and
Like a
feels
good
aligned.
proper coach. Just like if you had a basketball coach, you had a football coach out there, you had someone, you're like,
Yes,
okay, let's get out there and let's run this drill. And you run that
exactly.
play, but you notice, oh, okay, this, wide receiver doesn't catch the ball very well on his right side. Like, okay, well, let's adapt and shift it to his left
Yes,
side. Don't mind my
yes.
football analogies. I quite like
Yeah.
football. But
No,
like
I'm just not smiling and nodding. You notice football is like one
football.
block I have. I
No,
don't know
football.
why.
First off, go Bucks! National championships! Woo! Anyways, OH for anyone out there who wants to just give me a review on Apple Podcasts with an IO would make my day.
Oh
Anyways, my
gosh.
point here is yes, and I think it's so incredibly important. Now, of course, like all things, you need to vet people. You need to get
Yes.
to know them. So something I want my listeners to know is how can they get to know you, Lara? Like
Yeah.
where can they find you?
Yes. So my kind of home is on Facebook. I have a group called the Cyclebreaker Parenting Hub, and inside that group, I'm in there every day. People can post. I can support in the comments. I do usually every week. I do some kind of learning session. So, and oftentimes I try to jazz it up a little bit and have fun because this is it can be tough
Yeah.
work, right? So I do challenges and stuff like that. So you can get a flavor for, how how I do things by just being in the group.
Yeah, your group is fantastic. I think your energy in there is so wonderful. I love you. You're often in there. I see your face.
Yeah.
You're real, right? This is one of those Facebook groups that you just go into and you're just kind of
Yeah.
left alone. Like you're in there all the time. Anyone can
Yes.
ask you a question whenever they need to. And you're
Absolutely.
so hands on with everyone. I think it's such
Yes.
an important aspect to have.
Yeah.
And that in your coaching, like the way that you do it, it's fantastic. So I highly recommend. You said it was called the Cycle Breaker Parenting Hub, right?
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to put a link to that Facebook group in the show notes as well. And is there anything
Awesome.
else that you want to let us know?
Well, let's see. Actually, on February 1st, I'm going to be doing my master class. There's
Oh,
a kind of a learning
nice.
session. I didn't even remember to mention this to you, Jen. February 1st, at noon Eastern time. I'm going to do a kind of web class. And this is a great way to get to know me, actually, because I go into pretty much in a little bit of detail, like how cycle breaking affected me and
Mhm.
impacted me from, the beginning to now. And
Yeah.
then I show, like, because I want to show this, it's possible, right? You can do this. Look, I did this. And I
Yeah.
want to make it shorter for you than 10 years, okay? Well, it just took me,
And for
but yeah.
anyone wanting to attend one of your master classes, if they're listening to this or if this podcast doesn't go out until after February 1st, I'm sure
Oh,
you're
right.
going to do way more. And so
Yes.
one of the best ways to get to know when your master classes are going to be, I'm assuming, go in the Facebook group,
In
right?
the group.
Get in
In
the
the
group.
group.
Okay.
Yes.
And how about this ebook that you wrote recently you were telling me about?
Oh, yes. Words that work. And,
Words that work. That's beautiful.
yes.
I love that.
Yes. Because one of the most frequent questions I get is, what do I say? How do I say this? How do I,
Mhm.
I'm sure people struggle with how to position things in a favorable, kind, loving way.
Mhm.
So, although we've talked about how that's not the fix, right? Those books and Instagram people who tell you all these, that's not the fix because you're not going in and healing you. But it is a way to start experimenting with connection based parenting because a lot of people feel that it means letting your kid do whatever
Mhm.
or not or not having rules or having punishments. What do you do if you don't punish?
Yeah.
So it's like an encyclopedia for it's geared towards parents with children right at the cusp. I always say 10, 11, 12. That's the cusp where you have to shift your parenting and change it. It's like
Oh,
a
I know
180,
that
right?
well. Yeah. Why did he have to
Yes.
change so much? But it
Yes.
was so much
Yep.
easier.
Yep. And that's where we go wrong because we
Yes.
we still want to
Yeah.
hands on, but really what we need to do is
Start backing up. Thank you. I think
yes.
I needed that permission as well because sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough then if I'm not on it all the time. But
We
no,
all we're
I've learned that from you of just like stepping back. So this
yeah.
ebook sounds absolutely amazing. I want to make sure that my listeners get this. I want to get this in the hands of as many people as possible. So I'll
Oh
grab the
yes.
link from you and I'll also put in
Yes.
the show notes.
Yes.
And I know we can offer our listeners a discount. So this is going to be great.
Oh
So
sure.
you
Yes.
guys, like Lara is hooking you up. So grab it while you can
Yes.
because like this woman is
Yes.
on fire and she is changing the parenting world. And I'm so proud to
Yes.
know her and consider her a friend and a colleague. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Lara. I truly appreciate you.
Thank you, Jen. I really had a great time talking to you.
I will speak to you later. Take care.
Thank you. You too.